Hello, welcome to our SILS Career Trek series. My name is Lori Haight, and I am the Director of Career Services at SILS, the School of Information and Library Science. Tonight, we're discussing unexpected career paths, and I'm excited to welcome our panel of alumni and friends to the conversation. After a round of introductions, I'm going to be asking them questions where everyone is invited to respond. So there's not going to be a particular order to that. And we will have time at the end, hopefully, for some Q&A from our audience. So at that point for Q&A, you're welcome to send something into the chat, or if you want to unmute yourself and ask directly. It's fine either way. So I am going to turn it over, and I will ask Anita to start our introductions, please.
Hi, everyone. I'm Anita Jotwani. So I graduated from SILS, so I was a BSIS 2005. So information science, I would say that my career currently, I'm a senior director of product management at ModMed, which is a health tech startup. My area of responsibilities is data and analytics, but surprisingly, in the last 3 weeks, I actually also took over the user experience team on an interim basis. So I get to really flex my SILS skills once more in a stronger relationship, but from both perspectives, data. But career has taken everything from help desk to product manager to business analyst to analytics transformation work to people analytics and HR. So I have been kind of around the block, so to speak, in different spaces. So a bit unexpected, but happy to be here.
Thank you. Allie, how about you next?
Hi, I am Allie Alvis. I am a rare book cataloger at Type Punch Matrix, a rare book dealer based in Washington, D.C. I graduated from the University of Edinburgh's History of the Book program in 2015. It took me a second. And also the University of Glasgow's Information Management and Digital Preservation program in 2016. Both of those are CLIP certified. They're kind of the European British equivalent of MLIS. But I am formerly a reference librarian at the Smithsonian Libraries. So coming over to be a rare book cataloger at a dealer is just kind of a little sidestep. So maybe not as unusual as other careers, but still maybe not what you might expect.
Thank you. Mike, how about you next?
Hi, I'm Mike Boyer. Presently, I'm a workplace strategy consultant for Wells Fargo, but my career path started in 1983 when I graduated from SILS. I was in public libraries for about 12 and a half years. And from there, I actually came over to the bank, but I was managing a computer lab for training because I had done that for the 3 years before I left the library. And that's led to a succession of different jobs in terms of building out classrooms for computer training, and then into building out offices and now planning offices. And the interesting thing about that for me was when I was in library school, I was always interested in library buildings. I did my master's paper on how the undergrad got done. So I've kind of come full circle. I just never expected to be there, but that's how it happened.
Thank you. And Meredith.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Meredith Weiss. I graduated from SILS PhD program in 2010 in information science, and I currently work as the Vice President for Administration at Virginia Commonwealth University. So in that role, I oversee many of the administrative areas of the university, including finance. Actually, I oversaw finance at UNC. I was going to say Chapel Hill, where you are, but now that I'm at VCU, I oversee all of the areas except for finance. So I oversee facilities and information technology and human resources and safety and risk management and real estate and just, a number of different areas that run the university. So I'm excited to be here and maybe get to see some of you, or at least hear from you as we go through the evening here.
Thank you very much. So I'll start with my questions, and we'll see how far we get and how much time we have at the end for any additional ones. So the impetus for this career trek was that a lot of times people are wondering the range of different things they can do with MSIS or an MSLS degree. So we wanted to hear from people who had done something outside the norm. So I wanted to ask the panel, how did you become aware of new opportunities that are potentially off the beaten path for graduates working in our information and library science field? So this awareness of like what you knew that you could also do, but maybe wasn't in your mindset at the beginning of thinking you were coming to SILS.
I'm happy to jump in and take a first shot. I think that what I learned in my career is say yes, and you don't have any idea where it's going to take you. So my goal was when I started SILS was to become a chief information officer. That was what I did my dissertation on. That was my interest area. So I wanted to run information technology for a large organization, most likely higher ed. And as I continued on my career, I started down that path, and then folks said, oh, you have a background and you've managed some finance. Do you want to oversee finance? Do you want to see over administration? How about HR? How about IT? And all of a sudden, I did end up overseeing information technology, but not as the CIO. Actually, I oversee the CIO who oversees information technology, and then I have a bunch of other areas. And how I got there was just saying yes to a whole bunch of opportunities, and using the skills that I acquired through SILS and my training, just of treating people really well, admitting what you don't know, being flexible, using good research skills, learning things quickly, and you can do more than you think you can. So that's kind of my path.
Yeah, I'll actually jump in and add to that, because I think it's all of that. When the opportunities present yourself, willing to kind of open yourself up to the risk of saying, I am probably not the expert, but somebody recognized something in me for that opportunity. And so taking it from there. But I think if you're seeking the opportunity, I would add that things I looked for were, earlier in my career, I would just look at the job description and go, okay, what core skills do I have that directly relate to that? I may not be the product manager for a major software company. I don't have that traditional experience, but can I do it? What skills would I leverage on? And really making sure that when I was talking to people and networking and having mentors, I was highlighting how my skills translate. So, learning how to tell your story kind of opens up different doors for you. So I think a lot of my career were just accidental conversations, meeting with people, and then over time them saying, hey, we talk about this is sort of related. What do you think? And I'm like, yeah, I think I could do that, because I know I have this bench of skill set that I got from SILS and through other career experiences that have allowed me to build on to go that route. So I think it's always being creative in a different way. So if you are, a user experience designer or even somebody in library sciences, I think that natural ability to learn and understand information that SILS powers you with is something that you could use to help you leverage your career in different directions.
Yeah, there's a great Seneca quote that is, luck is what happens when preparation meets opportunity. So sometimes I think to myself, boy, I'm so lucky to be where I am. But really, it's not by happenstance that I ended up where I am. It was a lot of hard work. It was a lot of being in the right place at the right time and building those networks and speaking to people and finding that interconnectedness with different fields, like Anita mentioned, because there really are more overlaps than might be expected. I know libraries can be a bit insular, especially when you're doing your MLIS, you're really sort of nose to the grindstone, head down in that world. But once you sort of look up a little bit, you can find so many similarities with other fields, particularly anything to do with information. When I first started my information management and digital preservation degree, I thought, oh, whatever, it's libraries, I get it. But, it really is that broad. It is information of any kind, whether that's antiquarian books or archives or, the newest Grisham hardcover that you need in your public library. It's any sort of information, digital records, digitized books. So that's a skill that can be applied very broadly and something that looks really good on a resume. So emphasizing that information aspect, I think it's a good in to get into other fields if you don't necessarily want to go the library route.
You know, in my case, it's interesting because the advent of the PC happened right about the time that I graduated from library school. But I had another job at the university for another 2 years. And we were just introducing those into word processing. And so that got me interested in just, you know, how can PCs and information be distributed to more people? And I was fortunate in getting a job in my final years at the library in a personal computer lab where I was teaching people things. And it taught me, you know, not only, well, can I teach them how this thing works, but can I also figure out for them, you know, okay, let's get information from different places. So when you try to put those skills together, you know, it's about, I don't know if I call it customer relations, but it is that, you know, you have to be able to transmit what you know and where you can find things for people and make it so that they can find it. And the advent of the PC and the internet has really accelerated all of that to the point where now, you know, with everything that we get, it's all about data. So on a daily basis for me, I'm taking spreadsheets, I'm figuring out what the ratios of things are for seating people, et cetera. And the other interesting thing for that has been that it got me more involved at ALA. I actually started being, I took the skills that I had now as a space planner and what I knew as a library person, and you had the ability to combine all that. So I think it's true that, you know, opportunities are there. You just have to be able to say, yeah, you know, I'm going to do that and I'm going to connect with people. And I don't think you can be insular either. And I think that's, for me, that was probably, I'll say I became a rebel, but I don't think that's really true. But it seemed like it sometimes with my library colleagues. I always felt like I needed to push the envelope. So.
Great, thank you. So with opportunities all around and being open to those possibilities, the next question some of you have touched on a little bit about, how would you prepare yourself for marketing those transferable skills? So specifically, I'd love to hear about the opportunity to network and introduce yourself to different people, but then also in terms of communication in terms of what else you're doing. So, but it can be additional transferable skills too, because I think that even if you see things, the actual breaking into connecting with people to talk about that as a new opportunity can be overwhelming.
I am a huge proponent of social media. You might have seen me around on Instagram or Twitter. I'm Book Historia. But I find that incredibly useful as a networking tool, particularly during COVID times when we can't all be together at ALA and, you know, talk to each other. But hashtag library Twitter, there is a lot of information that goes on and conversations that, you know, even if you're not an active Twitter user, you don't have to participate in the conversations. But it's interesting to sort of observe and watch these things come up and sort of the cycles of how these things come up. There are always kind of these evergreen topics that are discussed. And Twitter and social media is also a great place to sort of hone your communication skills, because places like Twitter have character limits. So you have to be succinct in communicating what you're talking about. There's an emphasis on the visual element. So you get kind of a sense of what people like to see, what catches attention. So there's this marketing element to social media that can be a good skill to develop. And that's definitely something that you can carry forward into professional positions. It seems like nowadays a lot of professional positions, particularly library and library adjacent stuff, have a social media or public facing element that you can really say like, well, I've done this, here's something that I've done. Yeah.
I'll say that I think when I'm thinking about like a few opportunities like in early to the mid of my career where I kind of was like, oh, this is interesting. Someone presented and say, oh, you should consider this. And, I wasn't really sure. I was like, well, how do I take what I'm doing today to translate it? Some of it was really talking to other people who were in kind of that destination role. So leveraging my network in some cases, asking, hey, do you know somebody who is a business analyst? When I moved from a technology analyst to a business analyst, can you introduce me to them? So if that route worked, great, I would get information there. Since, the internet, I think, has gotten even more useful now than it was, earlier in my career, but just even looking for, what does a business analyst do? Like, what do other companies hire and expect these people to do? And then seeing it in different industries, it was pretty clear to me that there's kind of that fundamental skill set that college actually prepares you for. I think regardless of what major, SILS definitely from a research perspective, but, it's kind of doing your due diligence and kind of saying, okay, if this is valuable to an organization, this is how my skill looks and behaves as I do it today. But what would make the difference? So really understanding the company's mission, how you align your skill set to that mission, and just really being comfortable talking about it. I think the biggest challenge is we're not comfortable talking about ourselves many times, especially earlier in the career where you're not sure if you actually have the skill or capability to actually do it well. So I think it's just, don't deprecate yourself and saying that, you can't do it or you're not going to do it. Really go for it, but figure out how to practice having that conversation. It's like positive self-talk meets preparation of talking to the right people that kind of give you the clues of the lines to use to kind of practice saying, okay, this is what this means and this is the value it adds. And I'll just say, I was like, as eras have changed, in more senior careers and more recently, when I knew I wanted to transition from, people analytics and the retail HR space to healthcare, for me, I actually had to start networking in the healthcare space. I had to learn how to communicate, how to speak the language of health tech people. And I was kind of nervous. It was all during the COVID era. I was nervous to do that. I was like, well, I don't know how to talk to strangers online and these one-on-one conversations. So I signed up for something called Lunch Club. And literally they match you with people across all sectors. And I just used it to prepare my elevator pitch and got really comfortable of talking about how I wanted to present myself. And once I finally got to a point where I had 15 conversations with people and I was like, okay, I think I got my elevator pitch down. I know how I want to be perceived. Now I needed to make sure that I have the skills for the industry I want to move into to kind of back up my pitch. So I think it was work. I will say it was not easy to make the transition, but it paid off because there is actually, and now in my job day to day, I can actually see, oh yes, everything I have done before applies today, even stuff that I learned at SILS, I'm still using and tapping into that skill set.
Touching just briefly on something that Anita said about being confident in how you talk about yourself to others. Even if you don't know something, know that you are a trained information specialist. So if you don't know something, you know where to find it, or at least how to find it or who to talk to find it. So that is sort of a feather in your cap and a bit of a bolster for you that, information is your deal. So go forth.
That's great.
Mike, do you want to go or do you want me to?
Yeah, I'll go. I thought about that. It's like you just need to. I love the thing that you said, Ellie. You just have to be confident about it, and you do know where to look. so don't let that hold you up. And I don't think, to me, I think there are so many more opportunities now than maybe when I started. But again, I think that's because the information age and the internet has brought all of these opportunities to us. We don't have to just look in a certain place anymore. We know we can do that. So all you need to really know is the skills you have are definitely transferable to somebody. You might have to figure out how to translate it to them. That's not always the easiest thing because, like Anita was talking about, they're going to use this word and I'm going to use this one. But how do we bring those together so that we're having that conversation?
I think there's been a lot of good advice. I think what I would add is that relationships really matter, and relationships are going to matter in your career probably more than just about anything, more than almost any skill that you can gather. It's going to be relationships. And so every opportunity that you have to, especially as a student, to talk to somebody, find somebody that has a job that you are interested in, or you think you might be interested in, and just reach out. I'm a student, I'm new in my field, I'm new in this area. I really think that what you do is amazing, and I'd love to learn a little bit about you. And then you just talk to them and ask them questions. I mean, we're all here right now to answer your questions and to get to know you. So what we're basically saying to you is we're interested in helping you succeed. So find other people that are interested in helping you succeed. It's so much harder. Not that you shouldn't do it, and not you shouldn't do that great advice that Anita said that takes a lot of work. Not that you shouldn't be really good at selling yourself, but it's so much easier if someone else is selling you. So if you can build relationships just through conversations with people in different industries, and then all of a sudden a position opens up, or they know of something, they're going to reach out to you and they're saying, you know what, I met someone that is really up and coming. And so build those relationships. And, you know, if you all don't leave here with one of our contact information, this is a missed opportunity, because we're here to help you. And that should be something you spend a lot of time doing. It's just meeting people, getting their contact information. You know, even if you're having a 15-20 minute meeting with them, touching base with an email afterwards, thank you, or what have you. And then, you know, every couple of months, you know, following up on them. Hey, I saw you did this, or I saw this about you. That's really, and keeping in their frame of mind, that's going to help you 10,000 fold. And most opportunities that I've had in my career is because I got to know somebody that then reached out to me.
Yeah, and going back to what Meredith said, something about, you know, asking questions. Relationships are a two-way street. Like, you wouldn't go on a second date with somebody who only talked about themselves. So, you know, have conversations, even Google the person ahead of time. If you're going to be reaching out to somebody in a position somewhere, you know, look at their LinkedIn, see if there are any interesting conversation topics that you can open up with. Like, have a conversation. Don't just say, give me information, or here is how I'm awesome, hire me. You know, it's more of an organic sort of flow.
You don't want the first time you meet with someone because you want the job. You want to meet with them and have a relationship, and then the job all of a sudden comes a few months later. It's so much easier that way. Don't build a relationship when you want something from them other than just a relationship, or some advice.
I think that is all excellent advice. Thank you very much. I love the part about there are so many things that pop out, especially for students entering their careers. The ability to, sometimes employers are not very good at connecting the dots. So the ability to translate for them, as Mike was saying, in terms of if you have done a lot of things in one industry and you want to look at a different industry, that's possible, but they're not going to connect the dots for you. That's all things you would do ahead of time. And I think the comments about networking are huge. I think that not waiting until you need something, making it organic, and that it's a two-way street, and that I think students get a pass. I mean, if anyone as a student says, can I talk to you? People are like, sure. You're not seeming like you're, you know, out for their job, right? You're usually talking 2 or 3 jobs away of somebody. And so there's a lot of flexibility there for people to want to help. So I think that's all really important. So I think that in terms of questions that I want to ask before I turn it over to the group, the last question I wanted to ask at this point was, there's a little bit about stepping off one ladder rung and you might know where the next ladder rung is, and there's a little bit of space there. And so not every position is like neat and tidy, like you're going to leave this and jump over here. And so what were some of those characteristics that you had to lean on from your own personal or professional traits that helped with these pivot moves that you've been doing?
That's a tough one.
It is a little tough. Maybe I can contribute one thing to that. So in the job that I'm in now, and I had other jobs that would lead up to it, but one of the things that I had to do was really tell them or translate to them what it is I could do. And it was interesting to me that so much of everything that I'll probably be doing is all about organizing information. And they were most interested in that, and also what my customer service skills were. So, but it's not just customer service, right? It's about the ability to meet and interact with people, to try to connect with them in another way. And I think that's just so key, to being successful in any job. It's not just about the job you're doing, but maybe it's as pleasant as Allie and Anita and Meredith are. There's something about that, but it's also they start to recognize, once they know the person, that they're going to know what your skills are, and they'll see those things.
Yeah, one of my bosses talks a lot about skills versus meta skills, where you know how to look at a book and tell that it's from the 18th century, the 19th century, or if it's a modern paperback or something, like that's a skill. But a meta skill is something like communication, or the ability to be flexible, or something like that. And I really feel like communication is one of the primary meta skills that anybody can have going into any job. Because like Mike was saying, and Anita, translating how your MLIS skills work for an information, a digital information venue, or any other sort of field, that translation is communication. And you can do that sometimes in your cover letter. The cover letter is, it's where you get to tell your story, and you can explicitly connect those dots for potential employers. But communicating in a collaborative setting, communicating in a project management setting, so that way everybody knows what they're supposed to be doing. It's a really important skill to have. As a rare book cataloger at a book dealer, communication sells books. So it really is part of the bottom line. You need to be able to say, here's why this book is cool and why it would fit well in your collection or in this library or anything else. Because you're faced with a thing, and it's hard to distill that down to a few salient points. But working on your communication skill, it's something that you can hone. I know starting as a cataloger, I was more trained as, like I said, a reference librarian. So I talk to people, I answer reference questions. It wasn't necessarily, look at this one interesting thing. But you can develop these skills within skills as you go along.
Yeah, I would say communication definitely is something that gets called out role after role for me. But I would say that the other thing that I looked towards, like when I was pivoting, was if I was going into a different space that I hadn't been in before, I had to be comfortable enough to recognize that I didn't have all the context, and know to recognize to ask for it, ask for people, like continue that path of learning through meeting my peers and learning about what their perspective on the role was, what their perspective on whatever the project or initiative or the space that I was working in. And it's a lot of like listening, as much as I was hired to be impactful in X role, I also had to step back and say, I need to understand like where I'm at, like listening to how the teams interact with each other, how they communicated with each other, how they interact with the systems that we were working with. And the stakeholders that are around me, they may not be involved in my day-to-day, but who has the influence in the room to change the direction of whatever we're working on. So I think it's like, recognizing that, as much as I was excited and saying, oh my God, they love me and I'm moving into this role and they know how talented I am, recognizing that I'm not going to always be the most talented person in the room, and I won't be successful without the rest of the people around me. So just being really humble in the beginning was also something that helped me navigate new spaces. So, somebody that went from financial analytics to people analytics literally in like a 6-month period, that's like whiplash from the information I needed to be successful. Fundamental skills were there. That's why they hired me. But I had to go and reorient myself to this new space.
I think I'll just add on to those. Really great advice. This is a great panel. I would say in every new role, really focusing on establishing your credibility and your trust with folks is really, really important. And that is something that before you can make big moves or before people are ready to follow you, you have to have established trust and you have to have credibility. And a lot of times that means, sort of to some of the points I raised earlier, is maybe you're not the voice that needs to put forward this decision or this thought, and that's okay, right? So it's who's the best person or best group of people to put forward an idea, or who is the person that has the voice for a particular idea for that to move forward. I'd also say that as you're thinking about career paths and eventual goals and that sort of thing, one of the things to really think about, it's a little bit off topic of the question, but I just wanted to mention is, someone gave me this advice once and I thought it was really helpful, is think about what level of decision-making you're really interested in and let that guide the type of role that you want to be in. So if you want to be making, strategic enterprise-wide decisions, then those are the goals. That's your eventual goal. You start to work and see how people that work in that space are. If you want to make very technical decisions about a certain product or about a way something is going to go, think about the level of decision making that you want. What decisions do you want to be responsible for in your career at different points in time, and then guide some of your decisions that way in your professional development and your networking.
Great. Thank you very much. So I'm going to not speak for 30 seconds and see if questions, either people want to unmute or chat, and we'll take it from there.
I don't have any question, but I just want to say that was really helpful. That definitely have solved a lot of concerns that I have for entering the career. So thank you so much.
Great.
That's good. And I really want to say to that, when entering the career, don't be afraid to get something wrong. Don't expect that everyone expects you to know all the answers. Don't be afraid to ask for help. This is what people are there for. Everybody's been doing a career. We'd much rather help you out than have you stressed out in a room or wherever somewhere. Just ask for help. Don't be afraid to mess something up. Everybody does, and you learn from it and go on and
also
realize
don't
that
be
most of
afraid.
your colleagues are here for you.
Yeah, and I was going to say also, don't afraid that if you pick the wrong career first. I was like, remember, it's a job first before it becomes a career. So, you may not pick the right job. And I will tell you this, the job I accepted first out of college, great organization, absolutely loved, worked at the organization for 10 years. The job was not right for me. But I used it as an opportunity. And after a couple of years of going and, had that conversation and, had built the network around me to say, hey, these are the things I like about what I do. These are the things I absolutely don't like. I want to have more impact here. And they helped me. My boss and my boss's boss and peers around me helped me navigate the organization to find a spot that really helped me accelerate my career in a different direction. So, don't I remember this, and it's like intimidating that you're like, oh, what if I made the mistake? Like, what is this the right place? You won't know until you try it. Honestly, you really won't know.
Yeah, don't be afraid to change a direction, because there will be people there to help you, and as Anita was talking about, you're going to learn something, so you can take that with you.
It's not always up. Sideways is good too.
Right. And don't let other people talk you out of trying something. I've had more people when I got offered something like, well, people that chase this or that or try this and that, they end up being unhappy because they didn't know how good they had it or whatever. People will try to talk you out of anything, just don't be afraid. If you try something that doesn't work out, just try something else. But most of the time you don't go back. People will be like, oh, don't do this because you'll wish you would have stayed here. I rarely meet anyone that wished that they stayed in the one place or went back to something they did. They might go back to something similar, but the step forward always brings on something new and exciting.
And I'll have to say to what Meredith was saying, I was just thinking about it. The first 6 months of any job is really, really hard, just because it's unfamiliar to you. So I think get past that hump before you decide to give up and change ship. Because honestly, I would say I'm in the first 6 months of my current role, It is very difficult. I am missing my old workplace because my network, my reputation, my credibility, everything was kind of already done and established. So I'm missing that right now. So it makes it a little more challenging. But I know that I will get past this, and I will not look back and say, oh, I didn't wish I made this switch. I'm learning something new every day.
I found it was 2 years really to get settled in, to be honest with you. I mean, maybe I'm just slow. I'm not sure.
I actually think the research says 18 months. I remember, and I probably read that while I was at SILS, that it was 18 months to get used to something. Maybe it's updated. But
good. All right.
that's
So
what
I was on
read.
par. Okay, that's good.
I think I just have too many. I have too many younger employees that come to me after 6 months wanting to quit because it wasn't how they envisioned it. And I was just like, you're surprised how much more you have in control of your day than you think you have. So I think there's always an opportunity. So if I can get them to the 12 months, most of them stick it around, but 18 months sounds a lot more reasonable.
But also, it's important to know your own limits. If once you get a library job or once you get a job somewhere else, it's not always sunshine and roses like you might be in the professional sphere that you always wanted to be in. But for some reason, it might just not vibe with you. Either you realize, you don't really want to work with things this way, or you don't really want to work with people this way, or the administrative structure is not really great for you, or you have a crappy manager or something like that. Like, be aware of what you're not vibing with. And if it's something that, you can talk to somebody about, you can talk to your coworkers about, say like, I feel like this person really doesn't like me. Is that just like something weird inbuilt into the structure of the place, or am I just completely misreading this? Don't let one person be the reason that you quit, but at the same time, like if they're out to get you, you need to really sort of interrogate what that means for your future at that establishment, whether that be a library or an office or any other role. So, don't give up if you hit a bump, but at the same time, know when to say, that's enough for my mental health. I need to take a step back. I need to look into another position or another role because I can't, in good faith, continue. So it's important to be able to say like, that's enough.
Yeah. I'll tell you, my first library job, I was in it for 9 months. And when 6 months came up, they said, oh, your probation period is up. I went, well, probation periods go 2 ways. Because I just was not happy for some reason. It wasn't so much about anybody in particular. It's just that the job environment didn't set me. And there was an opportunity to go somewhere else where I knew more people. And that's where I ended up, And so, yeah, I think you have to be willing to take that risk and recognize in yourself that, hey, this isn't working for me, but take that responsibility on for you. If it's somebody else, well, that's their problem. But let your own conscience be your guide about that type of thing. And it won't, I used to think like, oh, if I change jobs too frequently or too soon, maybe that's a bad thing. I don't think it's really about that. I think it is about finding job satisfaction and satisfaction in the people that you work with. There's just so many dynamics that go on with it, matched with that superior skill that you have from SILS, to bring you happiness, I guess.
Yeah, and that all goes back to the building of relationships and stuff. Because if you're only in a job for 6 months, it just didn't work for you, but your manager loved you and you made a lot of great friends, like now you have people that can recommend you. You can put their name on letters of recommendation requests, and you can say like, oh, well, yeah, I know so-and-so at this library. And, the person that you're interviewing with went to library school with them, or, there are all these connections that you can find based on making a single connection. So yeah, don't burn bridges, I think is another good piece of advice.
Yes.
I know it can feel dire and emotions can run high, especially in stressful workplace environments and stressful learning environments, but don't give them the finger and walk away angry. Like, you know, just take a breath and consider what benefit that would have or not.
Exactly. Well, I'm always pleasantly surprised by how much people want to help people starting in their professions or career shifting or pivoting. And so I think that's a great take-home message from this panel, is that yes, you have your ability to communicate and network, and you're comfortable with risk, and you're willing to take charge of reacclimating to a new position. But it's also nice that you have some resources, and so people want to help. And so using that and not being afraid to use that, I think sometimes there's a power differential and you're like, oh, I'm the new kid, so I can't ask any questions. It's like, that's not actually true. People are more willing to help because you're asking, as opposed to just kind of sitting there stewing and not progressing in whatever the project is. So I think
It's better
that's
to
something.
ask too many questions than it is to screw up. Like, you
Mhm.
want to err on the side of too many questions.
Yes, I think that's great. Well, I don't see any other questions coming in, so I want to make sure to take the opportunity to thank our panelists today. I really appreciate you taking the time and sharing of your advice and expertise so that we can share this with our SILS students. So thank you very much.